We're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast on a Saturday. The weekend's here, guys. Congratulations. You made it through the grind. The Monday through Friday 9 to 5 grind is behind you, and the weekend is ahead of you. And we are happy to have you along with us for the ride today on rumble.com/amradpod. Give us a nice thumbs up and a follow. If you listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, be sure to subscribe there and give us a 5-star rating, possibly a review. We got to do everything we can. We got to trick that algorithm into helping us share the message, radicalizing more Americans. And you can always check us out also on YouTube or on X at X America News. It is a Saturday, so the tradition like no other, Saturday Grab Bag, where we endeavor to bring you some stories that might have eluded your attention, some things off the beaten path, but nevertheless are important. So today we're going to be talking about crypto kidnappings. Chinese party might be using in vitro fertilization as a Trojan horse to take over America. The Joe Biden administration, under the Department of Homeland Security, freed a transgender child abuser because of obvious reasons, intersectionality. Newspapers are doxing their smaller competition at the behest of communist government officials. RFK, standing in the gap, seems to be one of the few within our federal government who is doing that on behalf of the American people. And he's pushing back on some of the vaccine madness. The climate pagans, they want to make everyone allergic to meat. And then some love advice from the Washington Post, because democracy dies in darkness. It's going to be a full, all across the board, Saturday Grab Bag edition of the American Radicals Podcast. We're going to get to it all in just a second, but let's thank the underwriting sponsor for today's show, and that's the M-Clip Company. You can go to m-clip.com, m-clip.com, and when you do use the promo code SUSPENDABLE for a 10% off discount of these really cool luxury lifetime guarantee money clips, everything available there from your favorite Major League Baseball team to just your regular initials, just like plain off the shelf sort of stuff. They look metallic, they can look leather and old. They also have some leather wear and some cufflinks. They also have the Suspendables line that has our badge and our emblem and our logo. These are money clips with a lifetime guarantee, made in America, family-owned business, in business more than 20 years. You mess it up, they will fix it, no problem. And they will not break the bank. You'll actually have some money to toss back into your money clip, which is always a win in these uncertain times. All right, guys, Saturday Grab Bag, have to kick it off. And I'll have to bring on my co-host, compatriot, compadre, cohort at GOB Actual, Garrett O'Boyle. Welcome back to a Saturday Grab Bag, where I'm going to hit you cold with some stuff, because there's some really fun news to get into today. Good to see you on a weekend, my friend.
The Saturday Grab Bag, a tradition unlike any other. It's good to be back, Steve, but it must be because I'm back on the podcast, and I think I'm coming down with a head cold, so hopefully it won't last too long, but I don't plan to skip another episode anytime soon. But
good, because carrying this show is a burden. There are dozens and dozens of fans out there. All right.
Mama and Papa Sue, friend, thank you for listening.
Well, let's kick it off slow. Let's kind of like get into the cold Wisconsin water of the lake and not have to shock ourselves entirely. Just a couple toes, maybe ankle deep, with some good news. We like to black pill everybody throughout the shows typically, but we did get some good ones. We can give a small round of applause, a smattering of applause for recent breaking news from our ex-girlfriend over at the Department of Justice, where a memorandum was circulated, Garrett, 4 days ago from the Deputy Attorney General, the DAG, and basically says that you can no longer use your pronouns in your email footer. Effective immediately, department employees should ensure that their signature block conform to the standards below and do not include extraneous content such as preferred pronouns. Hey, small victories. Yes, you take them when you can get them, right?
I suppose that's how you start, Steve. You take little victories when you can get them.
My lone takeaway to the email signature block stuff. There's like these inter-office like things that are just not important to the overall mission, to the
Yeah.
overall things, but they nonetheless cause an untold amount of drama. Like people would put Bible quotes in there, and "Oh, that's offensive. You can't do that," right?
That's my First Amendment right, which it is.
My problem was always the jerk who was the boss who got elevated to an acting role for
Oh,
like
God.
2 to 3 months, and within 45 seconds had updated their email signature block to say that they were the acting unit chief, second chief, mega Doppler important guy, because
Yes.
they had to have it on there, so just so you know they were so important.
And I'm sure just about everybody knows that type of person. And guess what, folks? If you didn't know, the FBI is riddled with them more than any place I've ever worked.
And if you don't know that person, it's you. All right, let's go to something that is just
Check.
kind of
True.
taking the law enforcement community by storm. No ulterior motives to this story whatsoever. Nothing that I would have been able to ascertain by actually reading. If I'm being tongue in cheek, if you think I am, you're right. So, from the NBC News, let's talk about crypto kidnapping. Armed gangs are hunting the internet's high rollers. So, NBC reports about crypto kidnappings. They've been around for nearly a decade, but it's become increasingly common in recent years as the value of cryptocurrencies have soared and facial recognition technology has allowed the assailants easy access to the victims' phones because you have your crypto wallet on your phone. They can get all your Bitcoins. I think Bitcoin is like at $120,000 a coin. So
Dang it.
sorry
Should've
if you
thought.
missed the boat.
Yeah,
So
totally
the
missed.
price of Bitcoin continues to reach all-time highs. Now, this is a huge, massive problem, Garrett. Like a growing trend that they had to do this very long story on. You can see the artwork here. There was a lot of manpower and resources devoted to it. And NBC News identified 67 incidents of crypto kidnapping involving a target or their family member in 44 countries on every continent. So
In 10
roughly
years? Are they talking about that whole 10-year time frame?
yes.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, it's if it bleeds, it leads, I think. But also, I think that NBC News is a reliable mouthpiece for authorities who are very concerned about crypto. And like, I'm hardly an expert on it. I don't even know enough to be dangerous. But when I look over at world population review studies, and the United States has the lead of kidnappings because we have the most people with the most money, so the most targets, right? So the most recent information that we have on kidnappings is that 2022. And that year, the United States had 52,000 kidnappings. So 67 around the world in 44 countries, which is like 1.5 kidnappings per country, might not warrant this amount of pearl clutching.
No, they'd have been a lot better off just writing about Donald Trump.
I mean, I can't ascertain any other possible reason for that other than we're just going to push hard on Bitcoin is really bad. They can do things like buy drugs and murder people. And you should stay away from it because if you have a Bitcoin wallet, then you're going to get kidnapped. Totally. It's guaranteed. Look at these kidnapping rates.
Because humans didn't kidnap each other for all sorts of monetary gain purposes for the entire history of humans. So
didn't we have like the Hellenic Wars over a kidnapping? Like that was where we got the Trojan horse because Helen was kidnapped by Troy. I saw the movie. Orlando Bloom totally stole that chick. And on the subject of a Trojan horse, let's go and transition over to a piece from the Federalist, which is not as ridiculous. And it is an interesting premise. And it does have me a little bit concerned. This is something I've actually been thinking about and contemplating, but to actually see it in an austere outlet such as the Federalist, where they are serious thinkers. I mean, as a side note, I've written probably a good dozen op-eds over the last couple of years. And the Federalist was the one that pushed back the most and had the most amount of questions and asked for the most amount of edits. And it made my thinking stronger. It made my piece stronger. So I've always respected them for that. So the headline, Chinese immigrants create 21 children via surrogate before allegedly abusing them. Now, you wouldn't know the concern from the headline, which we'll get into right now. So it's two Chinese people. I will butcher their names. And I'm not really going to apologize for it because they're kind of bad actors. So Sylvia Zhang and Guojun Wan One's 38 and one's 65, so I think he outkicked his coverage. They're originally from China. They became naturalized U.S. citizens and now reside in Los Angeles at a multi-million-dollar mansion. They're doing pretty well.
Wonder where they're getting all that cheddar from.
So Miss Zhang operated a surrogacy agency from the mansion. However, investigations revealed a startling truth. The only couple the agency served was themselves. Their biological parents of 21 children born through surrogacy. Now, the group is called Mark Surrogacy. The operation would have continued if not for one of the children, who was a 2-month-old baby, who had been rushed to the hospital. The hospital staff determined the infant exhibited signs of child abuse, and they contacted social services, who then goes over to the mansion and finds what looks like 15 kids who are inside the mansion. Now, there are actually also 2 surrogates currently with child with this couple's extra children. So 21's about to go to 23. We're coming on close to 24 children that they've manufactured via in vitro fertilization. Now, in May, these 2 were arrested on allegations of the felony child endangerment and neglect. But despite that, they were not charged. It is California.
Yeah.
But maybe there actually wasn't probable cause. Maybe it was just sort of outrage because it's weird. And there was maybe a certain amount of scamming going on here where they were not doing surrogacy for anybody. But then again, they're in a multi-million-dollar mansion. Maybe they have the money and they just want lots of kids, which is actually what they argued. They said, look, they weren't charged. They were released. In an interview with the Wall Street Journal, they defended their actions and arguing that having as many children as possible is not illegal. They strongly refuted claims that any human trafficking motives and instead highlighted that their lifestyle was proof of their capability to support a big family. Strong defense. Here's my concern. And Federalists did some more research on it. Apparently, the male counterpart of this couple was a member of the Chinese Communist Party. So he should not have been a naturalized citizen. But if you talk to George Hill about this, every citizen of China is considered to be an agent of the state.
Yep.
And if they're coming over here and they're creating lots of people, Trojan horse style, now you've got 2 who have multiplied into 25 people, and they're probably multi-million-dollar houses and multimillionaires because of the Chinese government standing them up. I don't think they're going to stand up a 2 million person army, but could they have people placed in positions of prominence in Los Angeles, high net worth individuals? They come from a good family, and that gives them certain legs up in society. And now the Chinese Communist Party is able to infiltrate our halls of power.
Well, and if you think along this line, how many quote unquote families does the CCP have here doing this type of thing? This is just one we know about because they got on the radar of Health and Human Services and then the police, and then weren't charged, because this is actually a smart method. There's the Chinese have this 100-year plan that they've. I think there's. I want to say we've touched on this before. I think there's a book out there on it. I think it's just called The 100-Year Plan. The intelligence community, of course, is aware of this, but I don't think a lot of people are. If this is one of their methods, just think in a generation, how many Chinese aligned Americans are there going to be? There's going to be quite a bit, depending on how many they have out there. Because I think that your theory here is most likely the one that's true. They don't really want such a giant family. You've got this massive age gap. Well, okay, yes, I'm assuming that they don't really want that big of a family. And they're probably getting bankrolled from the CCP, because what did they do to support this lifestyle? How did they make their millions? How can they afford this mansion? We don't necessarily have answers to that. But this should be cause for concern, because this is how takeovers happen. And when you think of even other cultures, I can't help but think of the various Islamic cultures that have flooded America, and Europe is a roadmap to what that has turned into. And that's openly stated as one of their plans, is to move into Western countries and overtake them from within. You can look at places in Michigan, you can look at Minnesota, where they've essentially become Muslim communities. Maybe the Chinese said, hey, that's actually not a bad idea, because a lot of these people maybe not the case here with this Chinese couple, but they will get on to government programs, which helps bleed our system dry. I mean, we're what, 38, $39 trillion in debt now. That's only going to keep increasing, which makes us weaker. And then Americans or generational Americans who've been here for their entire lives, and their parents and grandparents have been here forever, they're having less and less kids. So I think that theory holds a lot of water, and it's most likely what's happening. Maybe China should do a little better vetting on the type of people they have doing this sort of thing, because you don't want to get on the radar of law enforcement while you're doing it. But this will be something to keep an eye on over the coming years.
I believe this couple had multiple nannies employed to help with the childcare
Yeah, how
inside the
you gonna?
mansion.
Yeah,
And if he's 65, come on, he's got 2 babies that are on the way.
right.
That doesn't make a whole lot of
No,
sense, right?
no.
I think that you nailed it with the 100-year plan. This is thinking generationally. This is not planning on the next midterm election cycle, which is typically what American quote unquote leaders do. This is thinking multiple decades down the line. And I think there's something else to go to this, and that's going to be the opium wars mindset, because we hear all the time now about fentanyl, right? That it's being manufactured in China, it's being brought in here. They're essentially poisoning our population, like the opium wars. They learned their lesson in that regard. But that's hardly the only substance, and which is what I found interesting with our next piece, because this is also a story about China. It's a story about the Mexican cartels, which you don't often commingle together when you see it reported, but the Daily Signal did. China's vape offensive and the Mexican cartel pipeline, growing threat to U.S. security. Now, illicit Chinese vapes are now flowing across the United States border through the same routes used for fentanyl and weapons, generating billions of dollars in revenue that fuel cartel violence and fund the Chinese Communist Party. Since Mexico banned e-cigarettes, which I didn't know, apparently they banned vaping in 2022 in Mexico, which is a narco-terrorist country.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can get any drug you want, but you better not be caught vaping.
Cartels have cornered the black market. Stunner. Anytime you make something illegal, a black market emerges. Maybe people are going to use their Bitcoin when they're not getting kidnapped. They've smuggled Chinese devices through Mexico into the United States. Last year, more than 200 million illegal Chinese vapes were expected to enter the U.S. market. 7 of 10, 70% of the most popular vape brands used by American minors are illegal Chinese imports.
Oh, wow. That's honestly, this is another part of their plan. This is another piece of their Trojan horse. Make us sick, make us unhealthy. Ever since vapes started kind of hitting the scene, I think I first started seeing them back when I was a cop, and I was like, what the heck is that? And why are kids smoking those things? And it's like, oh, it's a vape. And it's like, oh, well, that's not illegal. It certainly can't be healthy, though, sucking those things in. I just saw something. It was like, or no, I think it was actually some of the Army guys I was with in Alaska. Some of them vape, and I'm like, bros, what are you doing? And one of them was saying that one cartridge has like 30,000 hits or puffs, I don't know, whatever they're called, in it, and how the increase of especially adolescents, kids are going through one cartridge in a day because they're sitting at their computer or their Xbox or whatever with their vape and just sucking down hits of vape as they, burn their retinas and melt their brains. And it's like, this is going to lead to another health crisis, I think, because that's going in your lungs. That can't be good.
I'm glad that we've come across this, because you and I are definitely brothers from different mothers with this regard, because we're both asthmatic and this is something we're both sensitive to. I know you're kind of under the weather and you're anticipating like the 21-day cold, which is what I always get.
Yep.
Same observation. I see people and they can't even take it out of their mouth. I'm like, I thought that was supposed to be the alternative. You do like it's like a stick of gum instead of Nicorette, right? You just take a quick hit and then you're good for a couple hours. But instead, they're just hanging out of their mouth. They're burning that heater all the way down to when the ashes touch their lips, and it can't be good. It can't. I don't. Whatever you say about, well, it's water vapor. No. Then you should just drink lots of water.
Yeah, it's still a foreign substance going into your lungs. Is that ever good? I don't think so.
Look, I don't need any other proof that it's bad for you other than the Chinese Communist Party is saying, let's get in on this.
Yeah, and then they've cornered the market with 70% of illegal cartridges.
Yeah, maybe we need to get POTUS on that one so he can say the China vaping needs to stop.
Oh, speaking of which, I have this right here. I meant to play it a second ago. Because whenever we get the chance to hear this, Steve, we have to, right?
Why do you keep using this? A lot
Because
of
it
people
comes
say
from
it's
China.
racist.
It's not racist at all. No, not at all. It comes from China. That's why.
My favorite.
Vaping comes from China. If he did that, he might actually lead to all the communists becoming addicted to vapes just to spite him. So it could be an excellent move. Let's talk about, though, the president's predecessor, the Biden administration, the human Roomba, and some of the things that went on there. We've cataloged and archived throughout the last 248 episodes. Day 249 on the American Radicals podcast. Yikes. Coming up on the quarter millennial episode, which will be next Tuesday. Let's talk about the Biden Department of Homeland Security and how they elevated intersectionality, transgenderism, and sexual abuse of children above the American population. And it was a report that I saw from Catholic Vote. Records. Biden DHS freed a transgender convicted child sex offender upon a request of a radical left-wing group. It has just about everything in it.
Oh, man. Yeah, that headline alone. Good grief.
So Homeland Security released a woman who identifies as a man, so a chick who feels masculine, brawny style. She served more than 8 years in prison for sexually assaulting a minor. The individual, who was a Philippine national known as Tim, was held by immigration authorities after completing a sentence for statutory rape. In an email, Homeland Security, the Southern Poverty Law Center, which we were reliably informed couldn't be imbibed into intelligence products by the FBI, and then it promptly was, and they wrote about the radical traditional Catholics being a threat to national security. So Southern Poverty Law Center reaches out to Department of Homeland Security, their attorney, who from the SPLC, this attorney, his name is Mitch Gonzalez, uses pronouns L, he, they, entirely in the signature block of the email. E-L, like the masculine the.
Oh, goodness.
Because he's Gonzalez. He is Latinx, I'm sure.
Okay.
He urged the early release of Tim, arguing that transgender inmates face psychological abuse in prison. I mean, after they rape a kid, I think it might be warranted. Internal Homeland Security emails reveal officials began discussing the Southern Poverty Law Center request within 4 days and approved the release on a Sunday when nobody was paying attention.
Of course. I like how it comes from the SPLC. The proffers of the radical traditional Catholic hoax are now calling for the Biden administration to release a transgender rapist. But yeah, they could be trusted. They're trustworthy. Steve, my wife and I, we started watching this show last night, or maybe it was 2 nights ago now, called 1883. It's like a prequel to the Yellowstone series. And in one of the first episodes, this dude, one of the main characters, he gets pickpocketed by looks like a teenager. And he shoots him in the back with a shotgun. And he falls in the street. And then some other townsperson yells out, pickpocket. And then the townspeople all mob this kid and lynch him to death. And that's for just stealing the man's wallet. Mm-hmm. I think we need to make lynching great again. Because, okay, great. You did 8 years in prison. Not great enough. I'm sorry. There should be no quarter given to these people. You're a child rapist who thinks you're a man. And I don't care about your claimed psychological problems. At a minimum, throw away the key. But no, SPLC steps in and Biden releases him releases her on a Sunday. Give me a break.
for full transparency, the circumstances of the incarceration for Tim for this 8-year period, this is what she did. So it says that in 2009, when she was 19 years old, the victim, the online relationship with the victim at age 19, believing that the victim was 16. So 3-year discrepancy. It could be a Romeo and Juliet type of situation. Okay. But when they continued this conversation, Tim learned that no, the victim was not 16. The victim was 14. And the relationship had begun when the victim was 12. And then Tim proceeded to have this knowledge and then arranged to go meet with the victim. So it wasn't like, oh, I got catfished into talking to a juvenile who I wasn't able to ascertain was a juvenile. And I mean, maybe like you're 15, the victim's 12, the online relationship. You could see how you could be a benign sort of origin to this because maturity level, intelligence level are relatively close at that point. But if you get that information and then you still proceed on and say, well, love is love. Well, yeah, I think that you get a millstone. That's
No doubt about it. Remember, was it Chris Hansen who did that show To Catch a Predator back in the day?
Yeah, and then they canceled it because one of the guys offed himself, justifiably so.
Right. And which is common for those who don't know. That's a relatively common thing for guys who are dabbling with child porn or doing this type of thing with minors. And honestly, like, don't cancel the show. Keep it going. This would be one of the people on that show. And there would be cops there and they'd be arrested. And everybody watching would be like, yeah, this is what we do here.
That show was so formulaic. All right. You have to give this aside, having worked this. All right.
Of course.
All of these cases are just turning a wrench. There's not a lot of intricate details where it's like, wow, I've never done this before. I've never seen this before. They're all the same. And that show was the exact same thing every single time. They would get the pervert who would show up, and then Chris Hansen would pop out and be like, hey, what are you doing here? And it would be this awkward moment. And then they would storm out, and then the cops would swarm them. I always liked the guy that had the ghillie suit that would come out from around the bushes and grab them. But it's formulaic, and I think it's an indication that this is a rampant problem. It transgresses all socioeconomic, racial, religious, geographic regions. I mean, just for your own blackpilling and fear, pull up the sex offender registry in your own neighborhood and see how many there actually are, and then realize that those are the ones who were dumb enough to get caught, and that there's an ocean of cases out there that law enforcement just doesn't have the resources to address every single one.
Right.
So
we used to talk about this on our squad, how there was one person on the criminal squad who worked CSAM stuff. And we would say, there's enough of this work to go around that if every agent in this office worked only this, we wouldn't run out of work. That's how bad it is. It's horrible. And America is the biggest consumer of it.
Yeah. The problem is a priorities issue. And it's just worth always restating. You see Sound of Freedom and people get really amped up and they're like, oh, we're going to take this on. America's children are not for sale. And then that petered out after a couple of weeks, because really at our core, and I don't hate this, people don't want to think about the worst stuff in the world.
Yeah, right.
And they would far rather have the press releases where the FBI special agent in charge wears his blue raincoat and stands up there in front of the table with the guns and the drug and the money, because that's what TV and movies, not Sound of Freedom, typically cover. And we're like, oh yeah, we're down for that.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody wants to see the hard drive that contains 140,000 images of 2-year-olds being sodomized on there and things like, oh, well, that's a real thing that happens every single day. So the FBI and law enforcement, they're driven by money, by tax dollars, and they're going to go where the getting is good. If they can get people to be amped up, and people are amped up about drugs and guns and money, then they're going to give you more of that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's pivot over, though, to the media running cover for government officials, plus also using an opportunity to go after their rivals. And this is back from the Federalist, which is a story about the Denver Post. So apparently the Denver Post doxed American citizens because they shared pictures and public records about crime. So August 1st, Denver Post exposed the names, locations, voter registrations, and employment of 3 private citizens who legally obtained public information, open source, and sent some of the of it to a popular social media account, which is called Do Better Denver, which is basically a site that's been stood up to say, like, hey, Denver sucks, our mayor sucks, we're all about being sanctuary city right now, lifestyle is being hindered by this. So Do Better Denver is kind of a rival as a social media site to the Denver Post, which is a reliable mouthpiece for the establishment within the city of Denver. A week later, Denver Post columnists defended their decision to dox the 3 women, not even dudes, for sharing the public information. Quote, people who claim to be citizen journalists must stand by their work with a byline and endure the negative comments and threats that come with the job, wrote Denver Post columnist Krista Kafer. Hey, Krista, I think you might be a member of the worst people on earth.
Classic awful, AWFL, affluent white female liberals. They're a scourge.
Also, anytime that clip can be played, I'm here for it.
So the Do Better Denver website said that the Denver Post did this at the behest of local government officials. So we'll wait on that. Citizen journalists will probably be able to ascertain that because it's not that hard. And the government officials were angry about the public disclosures of how much Denver sucks. One public record, one of the women discovered, showed that the city paid $2 million for vacant rooms for illegal aliens. That seems like a matter of public interest. If your city was taking your tax dollars and spending 2 million of them on rooms that are just not being used because we have to give it to illegal aliens, seems like a public corruption issue, at least a waste of public resources matter. Why wouldn't the Denver Post be all over that? Well, because the Denver Post wants to have its access, and the Denver Post is run and wholly owned and operated by communists who are in alignment with the mayor of Denver. So in November, Denver rejected a ballot initiative to raise sales taxes by $100 million. They actually voted the correct way on that one. But they're going to get another one because we have to just keep having more initiatives and ballot initiatives going ahead until we get exactly what we want, which is what communists are going to do. And they're going to say it was democracy after all. It's going to raise their taxes by $1 billion for homeless services for illegal aliens.
$1 billion. You know, Denver used to be such a nice place, Steve. And on one hand, I'm appreciative of these citizen journalists because they're probably seeing it like, hey, this is not what we want for Denver. This isn't what we want for Colorado. This isn't what we want for the United States. And at the same time, allegedly free pops into my mind. Allegedly free. That's the land you live in. It's only allegedly free because your local government, even in a relatively big metro area like Denver, is now implementing tyranny because they're arbitrarily using their power to go after people who are pointing out their wrongdoing. But yeah, sure. We're so back in base, baby. And look, I will fully admit that from my vantage point, America still is the greatest nation on planet Earth. But it won't be for long if we continue to allow our government officials to act in this manner. So they were mad because they were being exposed. That's precisely why the First Amendment exists. And then you mentioned a place like the Denver Post and the access. So they're going to cozy up to the government instead of fully using that First Amendment right that they have to just tell stories that hopefully would be rooted in truth, because that's what journalism needs to be. It needs to be rooted in truth. And the truth just is. It doesn't get angry. It doesn't get sad. It doesn't lie to you because it's the truth. And that's what journalism is supposed to be. But no, the Denver Post is going to help the government. I mean, that's so insane. You hear all this talk about something like Operation Mockingbird from the 60s and 70s. What do you think this is? That's precisely what is going on here. It is no different than when the Church Committee revealed Operation Mockingbird and said, "Oh no, the CIA is cozying up to journalists." And even take that to a broader scale. You got a guy like Ken Delaney at NBC who we know for a fact was cozied up to the CIA. So allegedly free. That's where we're at.
Journalism is supposed to be the referee in the sporting event. Like, you don't know the referee's name, right? Other
Ref.
than like Ed Hockersley, like who's just got like
Yeah.
25-inch pythons, and that's basically a novelty. Other than that, if they're doing their job, you don't notice them. You let the events take place on the field, and the game is determined by the players who are there to play the game. But instead, what we have is the Denver Post, the argument being made of they should have to put their name on it so they can be judged in the court of public appeals. No,
No.
the information that they brought forward is what's important. They're not worried about the name,
Right.
Krista, like you are, because
Yeah.
your priorities are not what journalism is. Journalism is just about the truth. It's about exposing the story. The content of the story is what's important, and people can comment on the content. It doesn't matter. This is a complete opportunity for you to go after your rival and try to infringe on their abilities by just using fear to say, like, hey, if you come out with this, we're going to put you in danger. I mean, I can't see any other rationale for that other than they want to threaten these people.
Yep.
And they also want to silence them.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And take that piece too about their pen names. Think of a lot of prominent journalists, or maybe even ones who aren't prominent. What are they trying to do? They're trying to get that name recognition. They're trying to build their platform. Hopefully, I mean, you got some out there, like I think of like a Matt Taibbi type or Miranda Devine. They're hawks for the truth. They're trying to get information out there that they think people need to know, and they have their name attached to it. But think of some dude or woman who's working a 9 to 5 or whatever, and they're kind of doing this on the side because it's important to them.
Libs of TikTok,
Yeah, with her
who was doxxed.
she was doxxed. That's the only reason we know who she is, because she was hanging out behind just the moniker of Libs of TikTok and exposing things, and then was doxxed.
Mhm.
That's a great example. And now you have these people here in Denver, same thing, because they probably had a little bit of fear already, because they thought, man, if I put this out there, like I could totally see people coming after me. And that's exactly what happened. And part of me says, I don't know if I prefer it, but if you are using a pen name, again, like go back to the beginning of our country, go back to the Federalist Papers. Those guys were writing those behind pseudonymous names because they didn't want to get a bigger target painted on their back by the British Empire.
And they wanted the merits of the argument to be what people were considering, and not saying like, oh, well, James Madison wrote that, so, you know, I totally am not going to engage in idolatry and say like, well, whatever he says is good. Like, that's what we've descended to at this point.
Mhm.
That's why I was saying like we need to get Donald Trump to say that the China vaping is the problem, because then people wouldn't vape. It's not that they're actually going to look at the scientific data and realize that their lungs are disintegrating.
Yeah, but my orange god said so.
Hey, did you track on the CDC shooting at all, which happened?
Just that it happened. I didn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. It's worth bringing up just because it's a matter of public interest and public safety, which we like to focus on. And then also some comments there, which just shows you how much you should hate the CDC, and you should be happy that RFK is over Health and Human Services, which is a adjoining piece that I have for that. So this comes from PBS. I guess in their dying days here, when they're losing out on their funding, they're going to have to cover the real news. CDC attack: a man fired 180 shots and he broke 150 windows. Georgia man who had blamed the COVID-19 vaccine for making him depressed and suicidal opened fire, killing a police officer. No one at the CDC was injured. Retired CDC official Stephen Monroe said he worried about the long-term impact the attack would have on young scientists willing to go to work for the government. I'm concerned that this is going to be a generational hit, because they're the Navy SEALs of science over at the CDC,
Gosh,
right?
yeah.
And then another one, this comes from a CDC employee who just retired. Quote, years of false rhetoric about vaccines and public health was bound to take a toll on people's mental health and lead to violence. Again, we are so important. It's all about us,
Yeah.
not the information that we put out there, which was fake. And we're getting completely off topic. Like, I'm not defending shooting up a government building, But the immediate reaction, snap reaction to believing that we are in fact the best. We are on high above you. We know better than you, Rube. And even though you put that poison in your arm and we told you to keep doing it, have you gotten your 14th booster shot yet?
Right.
Otherwise, grandma will die.
Yeah, this is the classic problem of government. It's the hubris, especially, oh, you're pulling in a retired guy. Hey, just go away and enjoy your pension, all right? Because
Nobody notices that you left. I
Yeah.
promise.
Yeah.
Next man up.
Mm-hmm. And this will not be a generational thing. There's all sorts of crazy people out there. And again, not condoning this type of action or behavior, but maybe don't gaslight us for years and years and years on end. And then still, even here, you've got the current CDC employee continuing to gaslight, saying that the misinformation about vaccine safety is what caused his depression. But he went and got the jab, admittedly, which is why he thinks he's depressed and why he shot up the place.
Mhm.
So it's to me, it's the gaslighting that causes a lot of this type of fallout, because then, especially if you're already more mentally fragile or unstable, you're going to go off the deep end a little bit quicker, a little bit easier, instead of, I don't know, just trying to figure out the truth and trying to detox your body from the vaccine or whatever other things you could do, or not getting it anymore, or trying to build your own platform to tell people like, hey, look, I got it. I shouldn't have. And here's the data proving as to why. But it doesn't help when the government just keeps lying to you about it.
And we're actually getting some of the truth coming out from the Department of Health and Human Services. So a couple pieces about the Secretary of Health and Human Services, or about his agency entirely. Video coming from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., where he's pulling back $500 million in grants that were supposed to be going to vaccine research, particularly for the mRNA jabs, because they didn't do what we were told they were going to do. Here's RFK.
Hi, it's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here, your HHS secretary. At HHS, we have a division called the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, or BARDA. BARDA drives some of our most advanced scientific research. It funds developments of vaccines, drugs, diagnostics, and other tools to fight emerging diseases and national health threats. Over the past few weeks, BARDA reviewed 22 mRNA vaccine development investments and began canceling them. Let me explain why. Most of these shots are for flu or COVID, but as the pandemic showed us, mRNA vaccines don't perform well against viruses that infect the upper respiratory tract. Here's the problem. mRNA only codes for a small part of the viral proteins, usually a single antigen. One mutation and the vaccine becomes ineffective. This dynamic drives a phenomenon called antigenic shift, meaning that the vaccine paradoxically encourages new mutations and can actually prolong pandemics as the virus constantly mutates to escape the protective effects of the vaccine.
Dude, remember when you were getting canceled from everywhere and being called a conspiracy theorist, tin hat wearing freak if you mentioned any of that? So to avoid blackpilling, this is great. It is great to hear somebody in government saying this.
I mean, that's well thought out. It's coherent. It's articulate, and it kind of explains everything that we all saw before our eyes. And I'm here for it. That's one of the few good things that we can say at a federal level, that we're at least getting transparency, and also on top of that, like $500 million. That's not nothing.
No,
That's getting pulled back. And similarly, there was also another initiative, and this came from Health and Human Services' own website. So they are eliminating financial pressure tied to hospital staff vaccination reporting. Health and Human Services announced additional repeals of federal policy that financially rewarded hospitals for reporting their staff getting vaccinated. Quote, hospitals were paid to report staff vaccination rates. Those numbers were fed into a national healthcare safety network, then published on CDC website to shame any hospital that refused to become an enforcer of the federal vaccine mandates. More than 36,000 doctors and their Medicare reimbursements altered based upon childhood vaccination rates. This is coming from RFK. That's not medicine. That's coercion. It's immoral. It has no place in a constitutional democracy or in a system that claims to protect children.
I mean, look at that, Steve. Okay, just think of the dichotomy between RFK and the people over at the Denver Post. Total 180 from each other. Denver Post, hey, you're not speaking what we want. We're cozied up to government. We're going to dox you. Here, you've got the lead person in HHS saying, that's wrong. That's immoral. We don't do that in this country. I mean, can we get every figurehead of these departments to be like that? We know the answer is no. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing a podcast still. But also on top of it, it makes me think of the quote from the current CDC employee that we talked about with the guy who shot the 150 windows. Hey, maybe that person should be fired because they clearly have drank the Kool-Aid about the lies of mRNA and vaccine safety and efficacy. Meanwhile, the head of HHS, which CDC falls under, is saying, yeah, this is wrong. So maybe that person should be removed from the roles.
Well, as long as we can talk about moral ambiguity within the scientific community, can we talk about making people purposefully allergic to meat, which is the subject of the next one here on this Saturday grab bag edition of the
This
American
one,
Radicals
Steve,
podcast?
this might be the one that takes me over the edge.
Beneficial blood sucking. Okay. This is it from a bioethics, and it's entitled Beneficial Blood Sucking. The bite of the Lone Star tick spreads the alpha-gal syndrome, AGS, a condition whose only effect is the creation of a severe but non-fatal red meat allergy. Public health departments warn against the Lone Star ticks and AGS, and scientists are working to develop an inoculation. So they're working on a vaccine for this tick bite, which makes you allergic to red meat. But these two scientists argue that if eating meat is morally impermissible, according to them, then efforts to prevent the spread of the tick-borne AGS are also morally impermissible. They explain the symptoms of AGS and how they are transmitted via ticks. We argue that the tick-borne disease is a moral bioenhancer, and it motivates people to stop eating meat. Therefore, promoting tick-borne AGS is obligatory. It is presently feasible to genetically edit the disease-carrying capacity of ticks. They want to make the ticks more viral. They want to make them be able to bite all the people to spread the disease so that everybody will stop eating meat. And it's a bioenhancer. It's a moral obligation on behalf of the scientific community. And then just shows you again, like how the science and the scientists who adhere and worship at that altar of the science, they just selectively do that for things that they are in line with their line of thinking and worship, because these guys allegedly worship science, but they also allegedly worship being vegan. Apparently they didn't consult the CDC, which I'm sure they were consulting very, very heavily 5 years ago when it was telling you that if you didn't wear 7 masks and walk one way down a grocery store aisles, then you were going to kill grandma. Well, the CDC actually has information about this disease, AGS, alpha-gal syndrome. And remember, it's not fatal. It just makes you allergic to meat, except when it's fatal. Allergic reaction can involve symptoms like hives, itching, stomach pain, lower blood pressure, and in some cases, anaphylaxis. There have been deaths recorded due to AGS, primarily involving medical products containing the alpha-gal, and those medical products are used to treat cancer and is also a blood anticoagulant and is staple in emergency centers. So if you have a bleed, they will stop the bleed with it. But if you have been bitten by the tick, you'll die.
I tried to pull this up. I couldn't find it. I need to dig a little deeper. But I remember, man, this had to have been between 5 and 8 years ago. I don't even remember where it's from, but I came across this article about some tribe. I think they were in Africa. I don't precisely remember where, but all they do is eat meat. They hunt antelope and they use like spears and bows and arrows still. And I remember reading through this, and it was like before carnivore was a huge craze, but it was like kind of right on the cusp of that. Maybe keto might have been like a bigger dietary trend at the time. And I remember reading through this, just being fascinated by this tribe, because I noticed everybody was skinny and not like skinny fat, like a lot of Americans, but you could see like the sinewy muscles, and you could tell that they were a strong people. They all had super pearly white teeth. And I was like, what's going on here? And then fast forward a couple years, and I did a relatively long stint of pretty strict carnivore, and I lost like 30, 40 pounds in a matter of a few months. And I remember I was getting like established at the VA in Kansas at the time. I go for an appointment, they do your weight, whatever. And I had to come back like within 3 months. And I go back and they weigh me, and she's like looking at my chart and she's like, that can't be right. And I was like, my weight? And she's like, yeah, maybe you should step up here again. And I was like, I think it's right. And she's like, you've lost, 35 pounds or whatever it was. And I was like, yep. And she's like, what have you been doing? And I was like, I just changed my diet. And she was like, lots of fruits and vegetables, huh? And I was like, something like that. But but meat truly is the power food, especially from a ruminant animal, which, man, as much as I want to go down the rabbit hole here, it's an animal that has a multi-chambered stomach. And so there's the meat is just magnificently nutrient dense, and the powers that be want you to be allergic to that and potentially die by playing God and increasing the viability of this tick's bite. But yeah, sure, we're on the right track.
Well, it'll be in line with other Western countries that are more sophisticated than us. Like, once you can't eat meat anymore, it'll eliminate your need for using a machete, which is where Australia is right now. News reports from Australia where they've banned machetes.
Outside the Victoria Police headquarters on Spencer Street, a purpose-built bin for a weapon wreaking havoc.
This is very important. Those knives, those machetes, create enormous damage.
Come September 1, it will be illegal to own a machete, and this is where Victorians are being asked to drop them off during an amnesty period that will run until November 30.
We've done this because we want to get these knives off the streets, because these knives destroy lives.
They used to be a penal colony, by the way.
And yeah, now they're like the most Gestapo-esque country. I want to pop this. I saw this the other night, and it ties in. Did you see this? This Nebraska punter, he's from Australia, and he's crying because he misses his family, which I get, because he's never been away from them, or at least this far away from them. Guess what, my guy? Don't ever go back, okay? Your country is not free at all. At least we have a little bit of freedom left here.
It's totally the machetes. It's the tool that's doing it. All right. I got one more on the grab bag, because like, we had some ups, we had some downs, but we're both betrothed individuals. We have a happy home life. We want to give you some love advice on the American Radicals podcast, courtesy of the Washington Post, because democracy dies in darkness. Men are struggling to find love. Here's why.
You don't say.
In the 1970s and 80s, percentage of men who weren't married by age 40 was in the single digits. But by 2021, it's 28%.
Ooh, not good.
So for a few years now, reaching a peak after the COVID pandemic, women have been noting the difficulties and disappointments of finding a good man, leading some to exit the dating game altogether. One off-sided effect is the hashtag Me Too movement, because guys were like, if I try to ask a woman out, she's going to cancel me.
Mm-hmm.
Also, dating apps, and this is a legit one, dating apps create the illusion of unlimited choice, but it's just that, an illusion. The problem for men is that most women, they swipe right on, because men are like, I'll swipe right on just about anything. They won't swipe back, because women tend to be far more selective. It creates like an 80-20 dynamic, where the women are basically only agreeing to 20% of the men. In recent years, young men have veered to the political right, while young women, particularly in big cities, have become reliably liberal.
Oh, really? Huh? Who knew?
They were told that they need a man like a fish needs a bicycle, and yet it doesn't seem to be good for perpetuating the species. In an era where the political is personal, this creates a new set of deal breakers. Mixed marriages are approaching extinction. Only 4% of marriages have one party that's Democrat, one party that is Republican. 1 in 25.
Yikes.
Those are probably the least happy marriages, I got to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, Garrett, Is a Madame O'Boyle one of these?
Classic awful. AWFL, affluent white female liberals. They're a scourge.
Far, far, far from it. Which, honestly, hearing some of these stats already, it's like we really did get the luck of the draw here because oh man, one being single, I wouldn't be happy with that, especially since being a dad. You know, it's my life's joy is being a dad. But then even if I had a wife who was essentially polar opposite with their worldview, that would be misery.
I feel like I'm one of the last few that got off on the helicopter out of Saigon when it comes to the online dating space, because that seems like something I would not want to navigate. And this individual who's writing for the WAPO is trying to do that now, and he finishes with this, and because it's the WAPO and democracy dies in darkness, I will quote him directly because he is a he allegedly, right? But so many of us find ourselves stuck want to get married, longing for connection, but also stubborn, desiring, but not knowing how to fulfill that desire, how to choose when there are so many choices, how to prioritize politics and religion when deciding how to spend the rest of our lives with. We only have one life, so we should live it. But we also hover in the knowledge of all the other lives we could have lived, but never will. And that will never be an easy thing. This is the hubris level of people working at the CDC and the Denver Post.
Yes. And he mentions politics and religion and prioritizing them. Yeah. Those actually do need to be prioritized.
Worldview.
Yeah. Or you're going to have a miserable life that's likely to end in divorce if you ever even make it to the altar. I saw some clips lately on Twitter, and they're short, and I don't even know why they're popping in my algorithm. But it's of like youngish women who are like walking home, or maybe being like a man on the street type of interview. I've seen a few of these in the last week or two, maybe. And they're all complaining about no man coming up to them, no man even like looking at them, no man talking to them, hitting on them, flirting with them, asking them out. And one of them, and you could tell she's a little inebriated, and she's like, look at my dress, like I look good tonight. And it's like, yeah. And every single one, they're attractive young women, and they're lamenting the current state of the dating game, which part of me doesn't blame them. But then part of me is like, hey, look at your world. And I don't know what maybe
they caused it. They caused their own situation. They made their bed. They're going to lay in it with nobody in it with them.
Yeah.
Right. I have palate cleanse, but as we've reached the end of the Saturday grab bag, want to get your thoughts, sir, to close us out on the week.
Yes, sir. So we are sticking with Matthew 5 as the jump point, starting in verse 13. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven.
But can I just lean in? If you do not learn to expect controversy, and you spend your entire life trying to follow Jesus without controversy, here's what your entire life is going to look like. Your entire life is going to look like this. You're going to walk around, and non-verbally, you're going to be saying, do you like me? Do they like me? Do they like me? Do you like me? Do they like me? Do you like me? Do you like my hair? I don't have to have my hair I'm getting a little gray over here. I can get the little Rogaine gray out. What do I get? Do you like me? Do you like me? I can cut it different. I can make it big. Do you like me? Do you like me? What about my jeans? Do you like my jeans? My jeans, they can be big. They can be small. The pastor does the skinny jeans. It's really weird. Do you want the kids aren't doing that anymore. Do you like me? I can do something else. What about my boots? Do you like my boots? I can do the tall boots, the short boots, the brown boots. boots, the black boots. Do you like me? Do you like those boots? What about my Instagram post? You didn't like my Instagram post. What about why didn't you like? I liked your post, but you didn't like my post. Do you not like me? I shared your thing, but you didn't reshare my thing. What's going on? Do you like me? Do you like? I worked really hard on the caption. Did you see the caption? It worked really hard on it. It was really, do you like me? Do you like that? Do you like that? What about this? I texted you. Why haven't you texted me? I texted you 7 minutes ago. There were bubbles. There are no bubbles anymore. Where did the bubbles go? Do you like me? I don't know what happened. Do you like me? Do you like me? Oh, wait. Do you like that I follow Jesus? Do you like that I have this conviction? Well, you don't like that I have that conviction? Well, then I'll just have a different conviction, or I'll never share my conviction out loud, or I'll never apply my conviction to anybody else. I don't have to. You don't like that I'm a Christian all the time? Well, I can just be kind of a Christian some of the time. Do you like me? Do you like me? Do you like me? And then all of a sudden, what you realize is that you have friendship with the world, but you have gained enmity with God. That will happen to you, friends. See, listen to me. You can't please everybody. You can't. You can't please everybody, but listen, you can please God. You can please God. You can't please everybody, but you can please God. And listen, if you try to please everybody, you will not please God, because to have friendship with the world is to have enmity with God. Now, track with me. I also just need to give a quick caveat here before I move on. Listen, to follow Jesus is to invite controversy. In fact, can I just ask you, if there is no controversy in your life, which parts of Jesus have you clipped out? You need to ask yourself that question. Now, caveat, okay? Following Jesus will always lead to controversy, but not all controversy means that you are following Jesus. There are some people who commit forms of controversy in the name of Christ, and actually what they're doing is utterly despicable to Christ. So are you catching this? Following Jesus always leads to controversy. Not all controversy means that you're following Jesus. You know, years ago, I heard this story about a student that was writing a book report. And the teacher that wasn't a believer told the student they could write the book report on any book that they wanted. The student was a Christian. And so the student was like, wow, I'm going to write my book report on Jonah. It's going to be awesome. I'll write on Jonah. And so the student writes the book report, turns it in, and the unbelieving teacher kind of sneers, is like, do you realize the story of Jonah is not real? And they're like, well, yes, it is. He says, no, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No. Finally, the professor just kind of goes, well, if it's real, how in the world could Jonah live for 3 days in the belly of a fish? And the student said, well, I don't know. When I get to heaven, I'll ask him. And then the professor just kind of said, well, what if Jonah's not in heaven? To which the student responded, then you ask him. Now listen, you see that? Now listen, okay? We laugh, but there is a way to be controversial there's a way to be controversial in the name of Jesus that's actually nothing like Jesus. And some Christians commit controversy in the name of Jesus that is despicable to Jesus. So how are we going to navigate this, Lake Point Church? How are we going to navigate this? Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to do it like Jesus. We're going to do it with grace and with truth at the same time. That's how we're going to do it. Now, I just want you to see this. This is John chapter 8. I just want to read it to you and point some things out. This is a very straightforward message. It says this, Jesus says this, as it is, you are looking for a way to kill me. If there is anything inside of you that's like, man, if I was just like Jesus, everybody would love me. You worship a guy that got crucified. Okay, just let that sink in. A man who has told you what? You tell me. A man who has told you the truth. That's it. That I heard from God. Abraham did not do such things. You are doing the works of your own father. And they're like, oh, well, what father are you talking about? They're doing this thing. Actually, hang on. We're on the wrong verse. I'm going to read you the right verse right now because this is really important. This is John chapter 1. Track wave, here we go. John chapter 1. He came to, I'll get there. It's going to be great. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Now watch this. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son. I want you to say the yellow words out loud. Who came from the Father full of grace and both. Grace and truth. Grace and truth. Unconditional grace, uncompromising truth. Unconditional grace, uncompromising truth. Now, let me just apply this.
All right, we'll pause it there because for me, this is really the heart of the sermon that he's getting into, or the piece that I think really stands out most. But I think the buildup we've had over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 episodes that we've gone to Pastor Josh Howerton with that sermon, that buildup was important to get to this piece where he starts to talk about grace and truth, which we'll get to next time.
All right. And subject of today's Pelicans, coming off of the WAPO piece about finding love. If in fact you do find love, as you should, and start making little people, you will have to name them. But if you're a white person, be careful, because white people names are kind of weird.
A lot of folks these days, what they're naming their kids, they're just making stuff up. You know, like I was on Facebook like a month ago, someone posted a baby announcement, baby number 4 has arrived. We're done after him, so that's why we named him Laston. What? That's what people are doing. They're trying to like justify why they named their kid a name that's just not a name at all. They try to justify it. They're like, he proposed by the river on my dad's farm. So we'd love to introduce the world to Tributary. Tributary? Tributary? That's the weakest of all the water channels. Why would you even do that? Doesn't make any sense. That's my issue with this. I don't think parents are setting their kids up for success when they name them this crazy stuff. This kid's got to go their whole life with this name, you know, make friends, get jobs, careers. I know this real life couple, they had a little girl, named her Ember, with an E, Ember. They're like, because our first kiss was by a bonfire, no one cares. Ember, what's that poor girl gonna deal with her entire life? She's gonna get mistaken for Amber, exactly. What's Ember gonna do for a living? Amber is a hairdresser name. Ember? Undresser name, stripper.
Trey Kennedy is so good.
All right. We've reached the end, guys. Thank you as always for joining us here on the American Radicals podcast. Saturday Grab Bag Edition. Back with you Tuesday on rumble.com/amradpod, 10:30 Eastern time. Until then, have a great weekend.
You've been listening to the voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/amradpod.